Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar presentation, Antiviral Patents. How prepared are we to combat novel viral diseases? I'm Allie Morton, the Product Marketing Manager at LexisNexis IP, and I'd like to cover a few things before we get started. During the webinar, please feel free to submit questions using the questions feature in the control panel. Also in the control panel, you will see a handout section. This is where you can access files pertaining to today's webinar, including the slides. We will be sending out a follow-up email with the recording as well as the slides to you tomorrow. Now I would like to introduce the presenters. With us today, we have Dr. Andrew Burke. Andrew is a patent attorney with substantial chemistry and pharmaceutical industry experience, including work at both innovator and generic drug companies and leading IP law firms. He also has extensive intellectual property practice experience. Andrew has a PhD in chemistry from the University of Colorado, a JD from Fordham Law School, and a BA in chemistry from UC Santa Cruz. Also joining us today is William Mansfield. Will is the head of consulting and customer success at LexisNexis PatentSight. He is responsible for overseeing the negotiation, creation, and delivery of PatentSight's global consulting projects, along with managing the customer success team. With an economics background and experience in market and R&D strategy in the semiconductor industry, Will approaches patent analytics with an eye on business value creation. And last but certainly not least, we have Jean Quinn. Jean is the founder of IPWatchdog.com, a patent attorney, law professor, and leading commentator on patent law and innovation policy. Jean has been named one of the world's leading IP strategists by IAM Magazine. Thank you again, everyone, for attending today's presentation. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Jean.
Thanks a lot, Allie, and thank you all for spending a portion of your day wherever you may be in various states of lockdown due to the COVID-19 virus. And that is the topic of conversation today. And if you have received the emails from IP Watchdog talking about this webinar or any of the advertisements you might have seen that we've run or that LexisNexis has run or that PatentSight has specifically run, you may have noticed that the focus of this webinar has kind of, I wouldn't say shifted a little at all, because really the slide deck that you're going to see us go through today has been constant throughout. But as things have unfolded very quickly in this COVID-19 pandemic, there's been just so much for us to talk about, and things are popping up every day, and new ideas, and what is this going to mean for this company, or what is it going to mean for that company, what is it going to mean for you, what is it going to mean for me, what is it going to mean for policy, how's Congress going to deal with this, are courts going to handle things differently. There's so many different issues that are going to be affected, and conferences are being canceled worldwide, and people are now being on various stages of lockdown, and people who are for getting married can't even get married with more than 10 people congregating, and it's really just it is a mess out there. And we kind of been told by Hollywood and by public health officials that this was coming. This is not really a shock, but all at the same time, it is seems to have caught us by surprise. So with that kind of an introduction, I'd like to bring in our panelists here now and kick this around for discussion. We have policy topics, we have the antiviral landscape we want to talk about, the companies, what does this mean for Gilead and Johnson & Johnson, who are working, primarily in the news. You see those companies over and over again. What does it mean for the technology field? What does it mean for decision makers? Gentlemen, there's so much for us to talk about here today. Before we get going on the slides, though, what is it that you would like the audience to have in their mind as we tackle this issue of antivirals, vaccines, and the life sciences industry's reaction to COVID-19? Will, let's start with you, and Andrew, I'd like you to answer the same question.
Thanks very much, Gene.
Sorry, did you say Will first or Andrew first?
Yeah. Will, let's start with you, and Andrew, I'll have you go next.
Okay, sorry.
Thanks for the intro, Gene. So, like my own intro said, I'm an economist by education, and I have this concern that the development around particularly antivirals is maybe an element of market failure. Maybe, I mean, are the incentives really there for these companies to develop this technology? And I think as we go through the slides and we see who's working on this and what they're working on, that I think we'll see that's probably the case, that this isn't the way it really needs to be in order for us, you know, as a society, as a race, to really be healthy and active. And you know, patents give us a really good insight into maybe areas where there might be market failure. So for example, the EU Commission use PatentSight in M&A decisions, which is another example of that. And maybe this is an area where we need to take on this information in order to make better policy.
Yeah, and the policy is going to be a big change here for I think a lot of things. We saw, for example, the Prime Minister of the UK has been diagnosed as having COVID-19, and some of his inner circle has said that you know, due to some of the misinformation or lack of information from China, that there's going to be some kind of quote unquote day of reckoning. I don't know what that means, but there's tension. There's real tension in the air, and people are scared and they're upset. They're angry. You almost see them going through the stages of grief here on some level. And Andrew, you don't necessarily need to comment on that, but open-ended, what would you like people to keep in mind here? I mean, the misalignment of incentives is what you just wrote about.
Yeah, so that is my interest here is certainly policy. I mean, I'm a organic chemist by trade. Now I'm a patent attorney, and another issue that is very directly addressed by these slides that you're going to show today is the drop off in research in anti-infectives, which has been going on for maybe 20, 25 years already. I think in the 80s and 90s, companies were doing a lot of research in this area, the pharmaceutical companies, but the research environment shifted after 2000, and I think research in anti-infectives as a general rule dropped off. And then the Supreme Court, a cabal really of anti-innovation activists came along in the 2010s. And so now we have the Mayo decision and the Marriott decision. Alice isn't really part of that, but in the life sciences, Marriott and Mayo, and it's causing a real problem. Now there's a real policy issue that the people that are really in a position to do this aren't getting the right incentives to do it through patent policy. Yeah, and patent policy is out there to incentivize inventors to get out the door and make these things.
Yeah, and I think that's a real problem, right? I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through, but one of the big issues, at least here in America, and I suppose everywhere around the world, has been getting people tested and having it be a reliable test and having it be fast enough and so forth. And well, testing is medical diagnostic, and
yeah, it's a diagnostic method.
And you can't patent them. And if you can't patent them, that means there's a whole bunch of people who are simply not going to engage in the research and development that it takes in order to move them forward. Now, that certainly changes during a pandemic like this, where now it's going to be all hands on deck, and I get that. And there's a whole lot of companies doing great work, and they're stepping up, and they're saying, what can we do? And a lot of companies you wouldn't think about. For example, the MyPillow is discovered that they can make masks. So they're pivoting to try and make masks now. So there's a lot of companies that are stepping up, but the whole point of this is you want to have, I think, a structure in place to put incentive in the right place ahead of time so that it's there when you need it, not after the fact. You don't want to be addressing yesterday's problem. You want to be having policy in place so that you create the incentive to be creating solutions for tomorrow's problems.
Right.
So, all right, so lots of exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Will, I know you're going to drive some slides here for a little bit. Let me push off for you. And what are we looking at here right now, other than scary stuff?
I mean, this is just a summary of all the issues, all the media coverage that there has been of this case, basically, and just part of the summarization of what you said already, basically. I mean, this is something that we need to look at. What are the issues that there are, and how can we identify those through the scope of patent analytics, which we'll do in some of the slides coming up.
All right, so before we get into kind of the nitty gritty of what's actually going on with these companies and who's in the lead and what are they doing and how are they doing it, we want to give you a little bit of information about how we know that, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how we know that?
Yeah, so this and the next slides we'll just talk about, some of the tools that we'll use for the analysis. And so we're not just picking up random data, that we have some backing behind the kind of analysis that we do. And so we'll just shortly look at how PatentSight measures the portfolio strength, what the technology field is that we're looking at, and how we define that. And then we'll look at who the players are in the field of antivirals, and how strong are they, how committed are they to this area, and then really we'll try and have a look at some of the specifics around what there is out there about the coronavirus particularly. And of course that last part is a bit more tricky with patents. We're obviously looking at that information has a lag to it, but we can still take some really meaningful insights from this.
Yeah. So in here, this tells folks, and this is a question that we always get, because we're going to make some declarative statements. Well, how do you know this? How did you get your information? How did you get your data? And we've done this webinar with you guys in the past, and we've explained it for an hour. So we're not going to do that again. But if anybody is really interested, I think you guys, you have a white paper that goes into extraordinary detail.
Right, and something I mentioned as well at the beginning, the European Commission use these metrics as well for their M&A decision making, and they have like a 900-page document on exactly how they tested them for use in the case of the merger of Dow and DuPont. So there's even third parties explaining how these things work out there. So there's a huge amount of content about what this is. So I think it's best not to go in all the details, but suffice it to say, there are two things that we'll look at, which is this patent asset index, which is the sum of the strength of a portfolio and the competitive impact. This is the average quality of an individual patent, and these are the two metrics that we'll really look at in the further analysis.
Yeah, and what I will just personally say here now is, because I know we will get questions about this even more, is that this is all open source kind of information if you really want to know. And there will be some people on this webinar, because we're all geeks on some level, who will want that detail. And it has to be that way, because for the European Commission to rely on this in their decision making, the rules and laws over there require that level of transparency. So if you really want to know where all these calculations are coming from and all the decisions and all the assumptions and so forth, you can get to that information level and see whether it jives with what you think is correct. The European Commission has relied on it, and Fortune 500 companies are relying on it as they make their own internal decisions. So it seems reliable enough for me for that reason, but you can personally verify that if you care to do that. So that being said, let's push forward and talk about the antivirals here.
So that patent asset index is one tool that we'll use, and the other tool that we'll use is the search that we have.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I push past
No,
that too?
no, that's perfect. No, just if you just go forward to the
Okay.
next slide and put those
All
on
right.
the screen. So we have one definition for antiviral technology, which is quite broad, including the IPCs that cover that, and excluding particularly elements of anti-neoplastic agents. So those used in terms of treatment for cancer. So that's basically how we define that. And the other part of this, which is the next click, is how we define the corona subfield. And we made this relatively broad because we actually are looking for not just things that work against particularly the coronavirus, but also other similar viruses. And that's because this is something new. It's something that people haven't developed treatments for already. They're actually utilizing things that were developed maybe for something else and saying, okay, does that actually work for this particular virus? And so we've kept that definition relatively broad so that we can capture those things, anything that works against similar viruses to the coronavirus.
Okay.
And so this is the development of that field for the antiviral patents. And we can see that filing behavior has kind of plateaued basically around 2008, 2006. There is this kind of plateau, but there are a couple of bumps in this. And Gene, if you click ahead a little bit, then it's just highlighting these. So there is a bump here around 2000 and a bump here at around 2015, and they're very noticeable. And these correlate strongly with other epidemics that have occurred. So it's clear that we need to have, or the market needs to have something severe happen in order to kind of kickstart innovation in these areas. And you know, I don't want to forecast the future, but I'm sure there will be another bump when we look back in a couple of years to 2019, 2020. There will be another bump of people developing technologies in this area now, and hopefully that will maintain into the future. But it could well be like we've seen here in the past, that there is this bump and then falling back into the old ways, basically.
Yeah. Now, and the hardcore patent people on the webinar are going to understand why it has tailed off so significantly here. But can you, for the rest of the audience, can you?
Okay, yeah, sure. So obviously patents, there is the publication delay. So this is a filing year analysis. So there is the publication delay of 18 months. So typically the last 2 years worth of data are incomplete. So the 18 and the 19, the last two bars are incomplete data sets. So the 2017, the third from the last bar, this should be a complete data set. So we can definitely see there is this reduction from 16 to 17, but the 18 and 19, these are definitely incomplete data sets, and we'll have to wait another year or so for those to be complete to see all the filings that have been filed for them to actually be published.
But
Yeah,
William, can I ask you a question here?
Please.
Sure, go ahead.
The filings for 2018, I mean, I see. So I understand what's going on.
Yeah, so it's a good question. It's 18 months, so it will have the later half of that year not being complete, and some of those can get published earlier, or before that. So we have a lot of data, and it's not that as soon as we have 19 data, we're then complete in 18 data. It's that comes out at different points in time.
Yeah, and because some of them will be continuations because and then those will get published as quickly as they can, for example. And so you really need to wait that full 18 months. So I just want to make sure people understand those last two columns. This is not to say that the industry is totally like turned away.
Tanking.
Yeah, hopefully, right? I mean, we'll see, right? You don't know for sure, but I think we can say that they haven't. But the other thing too is, and I got this question from, you know, John White and I, a lot of you know John White, he helped you pass the patent bar exam. He and I teach young, shouldn't say young, we should say new patent practitioners how to practice. And we got this question from one of the students the other day, and it was, what is this going to mean for innovation? And it's usually these kinds of events are good for innovation. And I've already seen, I'm sure many of you on the webinar have seen, inventors invent, and when you have an episode like this, creative people create and are inspired to create, and I'm seeing people create in all kinds of different areas, and I'm not a bio guy, so I'm not, or pharma life sciences guy, so I'm not seeing the creations in this space. I'm seeing them in a whole bunch of different other areas. And I also saw them when the BP oil spill happened, a bump in environmental technologies and stuff. So these bumps at these moments in time are significant. So it's good for innovation. It's good for obviously the patent attorneys as well. So hopefully it will be good for the world. And that's where we get into the question, I guess. Do we have the policies in place to really push forward and capitalize on the momentum? And we'll see. And maybe we should push forward and see who these players are, because it may be a little bit surprising what the actual dedication to this really is. William?
Yeah, so this is the top players just by number of patents. So here, what we were looking at, that filing year analysis, is just counting the number of patents, and here we're just looking at what is the active portfolio in this space and who controls that. So we can see, GlaxoSmithKline, Johnson & Johnson at the top there, and then down towards the lower half or the bottom there, we have the Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences as well. But we don't just want to look at, how many filings. I think everyone knows that just having lots of patents isn't the right answer. And so we really want to look at the quality, and that's what we have on the right-hand side here. And then we can see that order shift. So at the top, we still have Johnson & Johnson there, moved from number 2 to number 1, and GlaxoSmithKline has dropped significantly to number 4, with Gilead jumping, well, a lot of places to number 2, and Chinese Academy of Sciences dropping off the bottom of the analysis. So there's a big difference when we look at the actual quality of these innovations, rather than just looking at the number that is there, and that's utilizing that first tool that we talked about at the beginning of the session as well.
Yeah, and this is something that I preach in my space, and Andrew, maybe I can get you to comment on this as well. I am a firm believer in the patent environment that we have here today, that quality is what matters. I mean, the Federal Circuit, just in every area of law, continues to want more and more and more in these applications, to the point where you can't possibly deliver the same quality application today that you did in, say, 1980 or 1990, but these companies want to still pay the same price that they were paying in 1980 and 1990. And to me, that just seems like it's a fool's errand. And then, you talk to GCs, or more likely chief IP counsels, or sometimes it's the chief patent counsel who is controlling the purse. Whoever controls the purse, if they get it, they are paying a fair price for the quality of the application that they want. And it's not shocking that those companies are the ones that are at the top of this quality list. I mean, do you see that, one, in the space that you're working in? And two, how do you get that message across to the inside people who have their money on the purse, or have their hand on the purse, rather?
Yeah, I do see that. And this goes to the written description issue also, that, it used to be, there used to be a time, it was a little before my time, but I see it all the time in old patents, where patent attorneys would write, a load of words, word vomit, and try to hide the ball. You see these very poorly drafted applications. Those things don't just fly anymore. Sometimes they were real monsters of just gibberish, and you can't get those up, and they would get issued. But nowadays that just doesn't happen, I don't think. And the examiners in the courts, like you say, are much more picky about that. And it's something I tell my clients all the time. You can't file junk anymore. You've got to have all the details in there, and that's what everybody wants to see at this stage. You know, the era of hiding the ball is over.
Amen. And and I don't know what I can do. It seems like every webinar I do, I preach this, and I talk to people who get it, and then I also talk to people who, I'm out and about, and this year I won't be able to do it quite as much as I have. I try and go out and about to a number of events and talk during the springtime and all over the country. And people will tell me, I tell my clients this, and I get the same looks every year, and it's almost like the Dilbert effect. Well, we're just pushing paper, we're going on, and it's so I guess there's the companies that get it, and then there's the companies that don't get it. And the problem that I have, I guess, with the way that patent policy has been favoring those companies with the big money, with the big portfolios that don't really want to upset the apple cart, that are invested in the old world models. They're the ones that have been thriving over the last 10 years as we have weakened the patent system. And that really, really bothers me, because they're the ones that are following this Dilbert approach. In the way that you innovate is by risk taking, in the way that the innovators get it. They understand, they've got real interesting stuff. They want to describe it. They want to get the information to investors that they want, so that they can believe in it, so they can get the funding, they can move forward. But the incentives are all screwed up. And now we're here, and we don't have enough masks, and the masks that we do have probably aren't as good as they could be. I was just telling Renee, and I know I'm cascading because I'm really just ticked off, because I was just telling Renee just the other day, it's like there's only a matter of time before somebody figures out how to make a mask that you can clean in an autoclave, so that then the doctor will take it off, put it in the autoclave, and then by the next time that they need it to wear for the patient, it's clean. And literally that afternoon, I read that a doctor from the University of Florida overnight figured out how to do that. And it's like, oh my God, but why didn't we do that before this happened? And because there was no incentive to figure out how to do it, right? And that's right. What bothers me. And I'm going to shut up and get both of you guys to comment on this. And I'm going to take a sip of coffee and try and calm down. My Apple Watch is going to tell me to breathe here in a moment. So, Andrew, your thoughts first, and then Will, I'd like you to comment on that too, if you'd like.
I don't really have anything else to add here. I mean, this is an interesting slide. I think one thing, just with the antiviral technology, that the field does seem kind of narrow to me. I mean, even though it looks here like Johnson & Johnson and Gilead, there's like 5 or 6 companies that have a big investment in this. I mean, I think in reality, the commitment of many of these companies to antiviral research in the last few years has been minimal. And I think that's something that really needs to change.
Yeah, and William, that's where we're going to go to right here, right now, with what your slides are going to show us, right?
Right, exactly. So I think that's the point. So yeah, and this is perfect. So you can see here a lot of downward or static trends. The pink and the purple, Merck & Co. And Bristol Myers Squibb as well, going down. There are very few of these companies that are really actively growing their overall portfolio strength, their overall portfolio in this space. And it's not clear to me. I don't know the background. I don't know what their incentive is necessarily in this area, but clearly Gilead, Johnson & Johnson, Roche, these are the people who are really actively working in this area where others appear to be saying, okay, it's not for us, we'll stop now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then can you tell us when we look at this, because this is one of the views that when I look at your graphical information, these bubble charts that you guys have, once you understand how to read them, they convey so much information.
Right. I mean, you're totally right. The content of information here is massive, and you can really tell not just how big the portfolio or what the quality of patents is, but also in some cases the strategy that these companies are playing. We had a conversation about telecommunications patents before, and you can really see the operating companies from the licensors and such, just from looking at this analysis. So yeah, along the horizontal, we have the portfolio size, the number of patent families these companies have active in this space, and on the vertical, we have the quality. So the average quality of the patents, and the bubble size then is the basically the product of these axes, the multiplication of these, but it's the patent asset index, so the cumulative strength of the portfolio. That means that a portfolio in the top left of here and a portfolio in the bottom right could have the same bubble size, the same patent asset index, the same cumulative strength of the portfolio, but can be comprised completely differently. One of many lower quality patents and one of few higher quality patents. And in this way, we can pick out, we can include those very large players with many filings, but then see that they have a lower quality and take that into account. And we can also include those small players, maybe not in this case, but startups or smaller players in the industry who are actively working and producing really high quality innovations that are really meaningful, but maybe they don't have a lot of them, and taking those into account. So, I mean, really the place to be in this diagram is top right, but almost no one is ever top right. I mean, Gilead, Johnson & Johnson, they move towards this area, but yeah, almost no one is ever top right in this diagram. But the place not to be is bottom left or towards the bottom. So the competitive impact, the average for the database, the average for all the patents in the world is 1. Which is actually not on the axis of this diagram, so we can see the 2. So all of these portfolios are very strong, very above the average, and that's not a great surprise. But we can still, start to look at the relative strength of these, like how much stronger the Gilead Science portfolio is than the Bristol Myers Squibb portfolio in the space. I mean, Bristol Myers, they have more patents in this area, but they don't seem to be the right ones, and they're actively working, but it seems that Gilead has hit on some stronger innovations than maybe some of the others here, and they clearly seem to be the leader. I mean, Johnson & Johnson, we saw in the other analysis, is the top, followed by Gilead, followed by Roche, and we can also see that in the trails exactly with this kind of stable level from GlaxoSmithKline, who's well out here on the right, with a lower quality. They just have lots of patents, basically.
Yeah. So now, 2 thoughts quickly. One, we're getting a lot of questions about, one, how do you figure out the patent asset index? What is it made up of, and et cetera? And then now we're starting to get questions about how is the competitive impact defined? And I don't know whether you want to take a quick stab at those, but what I'll say is, and people are asking about links to the white paper that we mentioned. We'll make sure everybody gets sent the links describing the information, and we can also send you a link to the webinar that we did that laid all this out and explained it over the course of an hour as well. But if you want to, William, kind of take a stab at that, maybe basically what is the competitive impact in a nutshell?
Yep. So these metrics, they come out of scientific research. They are in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, so anyone can go out and find that. And like Jean says, we can share the links. But the competitive impact, this comes from looking at 2 key factors. The number of citations a patent receives by later patents, and that's a strong indicator of the relevance of that innovation. And citations are used not just in patents, but scientific literature. And I always like to use the example of the Google PageRank system that basically uses the same premise, that it's the links between the pages that derive what is the importance of that page. And in that case, it's hyperlinks and web pages, but in this case, it's citations and patents. And the other thing is how broadly the patent is protected. So what is the market protection of that, and what is the cumulative GDP of GNI of all the countries where that patent is protected? So what is the protected market of that patent? And those are the two components that we use to calculate the competitive impact. And the patent asset index is basically the sum of the competitive impact for all the patents in the portfolio. So if I have 10 patents with a competitive impact of 3, then I'd have a patent asset index of 30, because I would sum that up, basically. Maybe that's the 30-second version for people who are interested, and if people want to know more, we'll share links afterwards as well. But like you said, Gene, we could spend hours talking about the metrics.
Yeah, we spent an hour literally doing that, and we only kind of scratched the surface. We had all kinds of additional questions that needed follow up, and we're happy to get anybody who wants that kind of detailed information, the information that you need, because this is really powerful stuff. And the other question that I wanted to ask you, because when you look at this, what I also find really interesting is, and I think this is why the European Commission is so interested in using your data, you could very quickly look here and say, well, you know, if Roche and Gilead were to ever decide to merge, well, wow, that puts them just in an enormously dominant position here, right?
Right, exactly.
You know, but now if you're looking at this and you're like, well, AbbVie probably is not seriously in this space. I mean, they're in the space, but you know, they're kind of in the lower left, trending that way. You know, so maybe if there's anything interesting in their portfolio, maybe there's somebody like a Bristol Myers Squibb who might want to get into this space more, might find it attractive to try and do a deal with them or something like that. You know, or if Boehringer and Bristol Myers, if they were to combine, well, then they might be a real force in this area. Just like overnight, they would jump up and over to the left, you know, or I'm sorry, up and over to the right. So, you know, these kind of things give you an opportunity to see what strategic partnerships could do. It may also identify people in the space that you wouldn't otherwise know were working in the space, and give you ideas for acquisition targets. And that's actually how you see people using this, correct, William?
Exactly, yeah. So normalizing the playing field so we can see, you know, which are the important people. I mean, there are so many companies and even individuals out there with a handful of patents. If we're trying to identify startups or people entering a space for the first time, and maybe they have 10 patents in the area, there's going to be hundreds, thousands maybe of people with 10 patents. And what should we do? Go through and read all of those things? I mean, I have my own reservations about the accuracy of an individual reading a patent anyway, but let's not go down that road. But I mean, if you were to do that, it would take you a massive amount of time to work that out. So we need to have tools to allow us to be directed to the important information. Which are the things that are worth checking? Which are the companies that are worth checking out? Which are the patents that seem to be the most important and are worth our time, our precious time, to actually read and evaluate fully, rather than having to go through hundreds and hundreds of bits of junk maybe.
Yeah. So now we have a question about this. Relates to antiviral patents, not all their patents, correct?
Exactly, yeah.
And that's where you got this from here. This is the search field that we were discussing
Precisely.
back here. Okay.
Yeah.
And then people are asking about, well, do you consider FDA approval or commercial success? And I think the answer to that is no, right?
Right, so we don't include that information. Those are really good indicators of the value of a patent. So if a patent is licensed, or if a patent is enforced in some way, or if it's litigated, these are great indicators of value. I mean, everyone knows that if a company decides to attack a patent and another company decides to protect their patent, that two companies are really interested in that IP. So there's got to be value there. But not every patent undergoes that. Not every patent that has value is an FDA approved drug. Not every patent that has value is declared as a standard to 5G or litigated. So we need to have tools that are objective, that those patents that don't fall into those abundantly clear measures of value, that we can still assess, does it seem to be important or not? Does it seem to be more important than another patent? So there's a lot of research that looks at litigated patents and their metrics, their competitive impact, and we can clearly see strong correlations there. That if we look at patents with a higher competitive impact, they're more likely to be maintained, more likely to be attacked, more likely to be declared as standards or as FDA approved drugs.
Yeah. But when we're doing this to find out the size and the relative strength and competitive impact and that sort of thing, this is not to say that you shouldn't actually go and look at the portfolio itself. This is a tool, right, to give people guidance.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and look, can I say something here, Gene?
Sure, go ahead.
This is the top 10 players, and William kind of, alluded to below this, below the screen here, there's another 1,000 players at least that have, between 1 and 10 patents probably, and a lot of that might be really innovative stuff. And I think those companies are counting on these top 10 and similar people and VCs and whoever else, entrepreneurs, to give them the funding to get the kind of, filing breadth that they need to get this out the door. Filing in China, filing in Europe. Europe is very expensive. Filing in Latin America. Get the breadth that would demonstrate that this is that they have a valuable technology.
Yeah, and absolutely. And when I was saying that, maybe Boehringer and Bristol Myers combined, that happens obviously, but in this space, maybe it's not as clear when you're looking at the top 10 players, right? But what you're talking about too is when you go deeper, that's when you start to see really interesting possibilities and partners and things that you wouldn't know. I mean, because these 10 players, they know what everybody's doing. Everybody knows what Novartis has. Everybody knows what Roche has. They keep their eyes on everybody. But it's the startups. It's the people that are coming out of nowhere. That's where you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And in this kind of very quick search and graphical look can be extremely enlightening. We did something with you guys a few months ago, and if you're interested in this, we can get you this information, but not in this space, but it was with the Apple Watch. And if you were just running some searches and kind of keeping your eye on what was going on, you could have seen Apple was working on watch technology about 7 years ahead of them announcing the Apple Watch. So these big data solutions are just so informative. Now, I'm looking at the clock, and we could talk about that whole topic for a long time, but I want to get to this one because this is where we're going to start getting some audience participation. Ali, can you publish this question to the audience, please? So we'd like to have you guys answer this question. How many of these top 10 companies that we've been talking about have more than 20% of their portfolio in antiviral patents? And this is just an idea to see,
I mean, it's how committed these companies are, right?
Right. I mean, are they
not just do they have the quality? Exactly.
Right. Are they all in? Are they all in, or are they, dipping their toe in the water?
And yeah, some of these are big players, right? Some of them are giants. So maybe it won't be every single one of them, but a lot of these are medium-sized players, right? And if these are people are really committed to this area, if these companies are in this space to the extent that we need them to be in order to have the technology to fight things like the coronavirus, then they need to be committed to this area. They need to not just have the patents, but they need to have the will to exercise the abilities that they have.
Yeah. All right. I don't think we're getting any more votes coming in. And there's the results.
So I mean, it's not surprising there's few saying all 10, right?
Yeah, very few. And 23% said 5, 30% said none. That's a good guess. And the plurality got it correct. It's 1. And who is that one? It's Gilead. And they've got over 35% of their portfolio is in this space. And I tried to get somebody from Gilead on this webinar with us today. And as you can imagine, they are at this point in time just they're inundated with requests, inundated with work, and hopefully we'll be able to circle back with them once things calm down. And the answer was not no, it was we can't do it right now. It's all hands on deck. It's too busy. So hopefully we can get back with Gilead at some point in the future, because we'd like to really talk to them about what's going on, because they've got it going on. Right, William?
And you could, I mean, we see their name in the news, right? We see them, around. We see their, particularly their specific drug that's for the coronavirus or being tested for it, pop up in news reports a lot. So seeing them as that one sticking out of the pack here is no great surprise. But if we turn the clock back 6 months, we would have exactly the same picture. So we don't need to wait.
That's the next slide, right? Is that what this does, or what does this do?
Yeah, I mean, this is part of it. I mean, this is the tracking that over time. So this is then looking at the Gilead portfolio over time, and each one of these bubbles back in time is 1 year back. So the last bubble that's today. The bubble behind that is last year, and the year before, and the year before. So Gilead's been really active in improving their portfolio quality, so improving the competitive impact over time, really, and not just filing more patents. They're having a similar number the whole time here, but just increasing the quality and really thinking which are the innovations that we are good at, we are strong at, and which are those that we really want to file and protect. And yeah, on the right hand side here, you can see these subcomponents that I mentioned, the technology relevance, that's this citation based metric, and the market coverage, this is the scope of protection, how broadly they protect their patents. And of course, you know, you could influence the competitive impact by protecting more broadly. I mean, you'd spend a humongous amount of money on that. I mean, people already have costs of maintaining portfolios in the hundreds of millions even. But I mean, here we can see it's relatively stable, that they choose to protect their portfolio in a number of countries. And it's really the relevance of that technology, the strength of the underlying innovation that's been increasing over time. And you know, this is, I would think, seems one shining example in this area that we have. And you said this before when we were looking at the other slide, you know, what if Gilead and Roche merged? They would be the strongest player in this field. But I mean, when we look at how committed these companies are, it seems like Gilead is the only player in this field nearly, right?
Right.
I mean, there might be smaller players that are committed, but
because we go back here, you know,
they're the only one with the you know, share in their portfolio. Nearly half their portfolio is dedicated to this space. If they see an opportunity to use this technology, they're gonna take it. And you know, we shouldn't talk about the coronavirus as an opportunity, but you know, these are businesses. This is their business, and then they have the right incentives then to actively work on it at this point in time as early as possible, because they have the technology and there is the situation that needs that technology. And it's and we are so lucky that has occurred. There's no reason, I think, that Gilead needed to be in this space. They are the exception to the rule, and it could have very easily have been none.
Right.
Well, Gilead historically was big in HIV and hepatitis C. They had big successes in both of those diseases, which are both viral diseases, of course. So in that sense, it's not really surprising that they've been on top of that. And I hate to, I'm going on a limb a little bit here, but I want to say I think Gilead may have been a little less diversified than some of these other big players. They don't have the history of these other companies. You know, I used to work at Merck, and that Merck started in the 19th century, I think. You know, it's been around since the beginning of time, and you know, so they've got their hands in a lot of pies, and most of these other companies do also.
Yeah.
But Gilead does not.
So, but I think we also have, when you look at talking about lack of diversity, I don't know whether this is what this slide shows, but it does show what you were talking about earlier, Andrew, about how when you extend it out beyond the top 10, you see some interesting things. And William, this shows the highest.
So here we're drilling into just those patents which could possibly be used against those innovations that could possibly be related to the coronavirus or things against that. So it's quite broad. It's looking at obviously not just the coronavirus, but other similar viruses or structured similarly. And so these would be the patents for drugs or therapies that might be effective in this space. And yeah, we see Gilead still, but obviously we start to pick up some other players in here, like this. It's cut off, but it's this Moderna Therapeutics, right?
Yeah. And they're the quality leader. And interesting, University of Texas, you know, has got high quality assets. AstraZeneca, high quality assets as well. I mean, so this is interesting. At least, I mean, very interesting to me. And you know, you can see this. And once you put in the search parameters here that we did here, this is all at your fingertips, right, William?
Yeah, exactly. So as long as we have some idea of how to define this, then we can immediately generate this result and see, you know, what is the lay of the land look like? What are the players that are active in this space, and not just looking at, you know, who the applicants are as well, but grouped up until their ultimate owner. So all of the company, like you say, Merck's been around since the beginning of time. They've got a lot of subsidiaries or acquisitions. Obviously, there is the German component of that was split up during the wars as well. That the US part was split away. So you have Merck and Co. and Merck KAG, something like this, in Germany as well. And so we need to take into account of all that information before we can arrive at this kind of analysis as well, which is no small task. And PatentSight has a team that just works on ensuring that we know who owns what, which is not always an easy thing to be able to say.
And let me say one thing here. If you could just peel this back just to another layer, you know, group of smaller patent holders, I'm sure you'd get more universities, more smaller companies, and for people who are looking for investments to put money into this field, that's the way to go. I mean, you know, if I wanted to invest in Johnson & Johnson, I can go and buy their stock. But you know, people who are, you know, real investors trying to, you know, help us out here with this virus problem, you know, should be looking at these smaller players that have innovative ideas. They need the money.
Yeah. So gentlemen, I'm looking at the time here now, and I would like to get to at least give Andrew the floor for a couple minutes before we have to wrap up. Because this is an article, and what I'll say is, when I got this article, we just published it the other day, and I was going through it, and I wanted to publish it, and then there were some things I wanted to add to it and say, and I said, Andrew, do you mind if we co-author this? And he said, that's fine. So we swapped some drafts, and I think turned out fantastic. If you haven't had a chance to read it, I'd suggest you read it, and I hope you would consider forwarding it to others, even others outside of our space. I think it's intended to be written in a way that even the non-patent attorney, but somebody maybe interested in innovation or innovation policy or the importance of innovation can understand what has happened and why what's going on and maybe going on, and why we're maybe not in a position to have these diagnostics that we need rather. So Andrew, what is your thesis here in a nutshell?
Yeah, well, thanks, Gene. So the thesis in a nutshell is that there was a Supreme Court decision in 2012, I think, Maya v. Prometheus, that basically held that diagnostic patents on diagnostic methods are not patentable subject matter. And the court went through, it went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court went through this strained analysis of how each step was basically known or a natural phenomena, and therefore the whole thing was a natural phenomena, so it wasn't patentable. And meanwhile, you get to the end of the analysis, and it's like, you know, they should have gotten onto Google Maps and looked at the forest instead of just looking at the trees in front of their face, because at the end of the analysis, you've like cut out a whole critical section of the life sciences sector of diagnostic method patents. And in fact, they even, Justice Thomas, I think, authored that opinion, he even recognizes that. He said, we've cut off, you know, the entire realm of diagnostic patents. And so it's up to Congress to fix it. And so, you know, in this era, Congress doesn't fix things anymore, so we're kind of stuck with this. And that's a big problem. And I think, you know, Congress really does need to step up to fix that. That's, I hope I expressed that without too much babbling, but that's the general idea.
Yeah, it is. And I think what's going on is that we know that entities like the Cleveland Clinic, for example, are not pursuing medical diagnostics because they can't create startups, because they can't get startup funding, because the investors won't fund medical diagnostics. Yeah. And that's just terrible. I mean, that's what we mean when there's a misaligned incentive structure. And so, and this policy was created by the Supreme Court. Congress allowed it to go on. And so we look at this, and we're here in this situation in, I think, large part because over the last decade, we just haven't been able to incentivize the hunt for diagnostics, and of any kind, really. And I always keep telling people is if you want to see the what this means, go back to the amicus brief filed by Medtronic and Bilski at the Supreme Court, and they explain that very matter-of-factly, if you cannot diagnose something, you cannot treat it. Now that just is true. And the treatments and for them, medical devices are the important part for Medtronic. The medical devices lag the diagnostics by about a decade. So after you figure out what somebody's got and how to figure out what they have, then it takes them about a decade to come out with the devices to treat it. And if you never find out what somebody has, you're never going to have the device to treat it. These things really matter, and hopefully eyes will be open. And when I read in Politico that senators were scared because they're older, and this is a disease that attacks the old people primarily, and the Supreme Court, they're older. I don't get it. Maybe eyes will be opened. I hope so. So we'll see. Time will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other key point here is that investors won't come in unless there's patents, and that's where the financial asset of these inventions comes in. And I touched that in my paper that you know, in the 18th century, patents were cutting edge social policy, and for incentivizing inventors to make new things. And the founding fathers saw fit to put that in the Constitution. The first Congress enacted a Patent Act. In the 19th century, you could make a good argument that all the great advances of the Industrial Revolution were directly related to patents. And now here we are in the 2010s and 2020s, and the Supreme Court has just chopped this down with these, you know, ridiculous arguments that it's just natural phenomena, abstract subject matter, and really innovative stuff. They're saying no to, and it's a real problem. But there's a solution, and Congress, it's up to Congress to fix it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You know, you'll hear people who are anti-patent or prefer a weak patent system say that the patents were unnecessary to the Industrial Revolution. But there's been Nobel Prizes in economics awarded to people who have demonstrated and proved that few, if any, meaningful innovations escaped the patent system that emerged during the Industrial Revolution. So that narrative is just a lie. It's just false. It's wrong. Yeah. It's fake news. So I'm going to go a couple minutes long here because I want to let people know we got another webinar coming up with PatentSight here at the end of April. This is going to be on uncovering savings in your portfolio. So you can sign up for that now. You can go to IP Watchdog and click webinars on the nav bar and register for that today if you would like. If you'd like any more information about PatentSight, you can get in touch with William and they'll get that information out to you. I see that we've been answering some of you who've been asking for the links and giving you those links directly in the chat. We'll make sure everybody gets those links in the email, along with the links to the previous webinars that we did describing the bona fides of their research and their system and so forth. And now, gentlemen, what I'd like to do is give you a moment to wrap up, if you will. What is the one thing that you would like people to leave today remembering? And Andrew, I'll start with you, and William, I'll give you the last word.
Oh, that's a hard question, Gene.
I know. I'm sorry. Maybe a broad theme. I mean, what broad theme? I mean,
I'm struggling here. That innovation requires patents. Anti-patent. The anti-patent activists that have seized the agenda in the last 10, 15 years are misguided, and now we're paying the price for them.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. William, your final thoughts for today?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm very for the patent system, and I think we can get a lot of information from here. There's way more information there than just for patent attorneys. Also, the technology guys out there, the people making policy, and there are a lot of tools that allow us to cut through this, to look at really what is the important stuff to review, what is the quality of this, and this is so much more important than just the numbers. But balancing that to what you just mentioned about our upcoming webinar as well, if we can look at what is the quality of these things and what is the massive cost of that, I think we're going to have some really interesting outcomes of that next discussion we have, Gene.
Yes, I think so, and I think that my takeaway here is that, you know, when you look at all of this stuff, when you look at all of the information, what we would hope to see from a chart like this is more Gileads, and thank God that there are Gileads, and thank God that there's all of these other companies that have a portion of their portfolio devoted to this on any level. I mean, so don't get me wrong, I'm not maligning any of these companies there. And you know, and as everybody knows probably here, I have a lot of friends that are in a lot of these different companies, and I think highly of all of them. What I would like to see to the greatest extent possible is our government, our courts, our Congress come up with policies that raise the bar, you know, that give incentives to push us up towards the Gileads here on this chart. And actually, I forgot I had a poll here. Maybe if people can stick with us for just a couple more minutes. Allie, can you publish that poll about Congress and see what people think about? Will this matter? Is this gonna change congressional views? Do you expect this pandemic will shift policy in Congress, patent policy? I mean, I'd like to say yes. I hope the answer is yes. You know, and now we'll share the results here with you quickly. In the, I may have clicked something here. Maybe we need to.
But that was quite mixed, right? So there's a lot. There's some yeses, there are some nos, and there's a lot of don't knows as well.
Yeah, there's areas 43 yeses, 37 no, 20% don't know. And you know, maybe very quickly while we still have you on here, there's the same question. Allie, can we get that same question? Do you expect that this is going to change the way the courts view patent policy or patent eligibility?
You know, the analyst in me wants to do the correlation between that first question and the second question to see if the people who are pessimistic about one are pessimistic about the other, you know?
Yeah, you know, and looking at the votes coming in, it's different. It is different. There's well, I mean, I don't know. I think it'll be statistically different because we still have about the same number of people remaining on, and the same percent of people that are voting. And we can, I suppose, close the poll and then share the results here, because it's 40% yes, 44% no, and 16% don't know. I mean, maybe it's not statistically relevant. There is a difference.
I think this is less likely that the courts are going to change.
And the only reason I think that, I mean, from a legal standpoint, it should be less likely, right? Because the law is the law. But a lot of these judges are, you know, they have a life job, and a lot of them are in their 70s and 80s. And I don't know. I mean, there's a number of people in our profession that are in their 70s or older that are just have locked themselves in and are not coming out and are very fearful. And I just wonder, you know, judges are people too. And on some level, you would like to think members of Congress are people too. And I think a lot of them are. Some of them, I don't know whether, some of them are just inextricably politicians, you know, but I think judges are more likely people than members of Congress. You know what I mean when I say that?
Well, judges have certainly turned these kinds of things around in the past, but you know, part of my cynicism here is they've dug themselves into such a deep hole that it's going to be difficult, but it's not impossible. So
yeah,
and you know, and if Congress continues to be unable to act, maybe the courts will come around. You know, just the more efficient way to do it, the more constitutional way to do it, of Congress.
Yeah, no, certainly that is true. And what I say is judges are more likely people. I'm making a distinction between political actors and just you and me as people, and you can, as one individual, just change your mind and say, hey, you know, in light of what I'm seeing happen, I've had an epiphany, you know, and as a political actor and as a party, and you need to have campaign donors in mind, and you don't always have the ability to just simply change your mind because you came up with an epiphany.
Yeah.
You know, in the same way that a federal district judge may be able to, or a court of appeals judge may be able to. So it'll be interesting. I know I've gone very long, and I know we've had several hundred of you stay long, and I really appreciate that. This is an important issue. I had a wonderful time discussing it with you, Andrew and William, and I thank you for joining us, and I thank you all in the audience for joining us, and thank you, PatentSight, for sponsoring, and LexisNexis. You guys have both been wonderful partners. If you'd like to take a test drive of PatentSight, please contact William. I think once you see what PatentSight can do, if you need this kind of level of detailed information with respect to portfolios and the like, you're going to be shocked at what information you're able to get from their tool. So please reach out, and my friends there will be able to help you. So gentlemen, until we talk again, stay healthy and safe. And everyone in the audience, do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Thanks, everybody.